All right. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Welcome to our Gravity Talks Mental Health and Our Youth. I'm your host, Vicki Yelverton.
And I'm your host, Natasha Lewis.
Before we get started, we have an awesome panel discussion planned for us today. We have awesome panelists that we'll be introducing in a moment. And we have a special guest, Ms. Kiera Sheard, who should be joining us momentarily. But before we want to get started, we want to go ahead and kind of take a chance to kind of just do a quick mindfulness exercise. We all know that there's a lot going on right now. We're coming in or coming through the current COVID-19 pandemic. We're dealing with a lot of the societal injustice and unrest that's going on right now. And so what we want to do is get a chance to kind of take 10 seconds, maybe 30 seconds to just kind of breathe and get our thoughts together so we can have this awesome discussion. So let's see. Hold on 1 second. So let's go ahead and join us. And again, the streaming family out here, you're welcome to join us as well. So let's go ahead and just kind of breathe in through our nose. We're going to breathe in through our nose, and we're going to just count to 4. Count down from 4. So 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold your breath for 4 counts. 4, 3, 2, 1, and exhale. 4, 3, 2, 1. One more time. Let's breathe in. 4 count. 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold your breath for 4 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Breathe out. Exhale. 4, 3, 2, and 1. So now we should be ready to talk. Okay. All right. So now that we have our minds clear and we've done our breathing technique, it looks like Miss Kiera, she's joining in and her stream is coming in and out. So we're going to go ahead and get her back in. Hey, Miss Kiera. Let's see her volume. I think I'm taking her mic on mute. Kiera, can you hear us?
You hear me?
Yes. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you? I'm getting in a better area so I can have this conversation. Please forgive me.
No problem. We understand. That's why we did our breathing technique. I think everyone has had an eventful day, but we're just glad that you're able to join us today. So as you get situated, guys, we'll go ahead and
It's
do
truly a pleasure that I am able.
It's breaking up.
To talk with you about this.
Yes, ma'am. Well, thank you. We're glad to have you, and you get to a safe spot. So we'll go ahead and start with our introductions. And as you all heard, that's Ms. Kiera Sheard who's joining us. But I'll go ahead and pass the baton over to Judge Ashley. Judge, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me, and thank you for putting on this forum. My name is Ashley Dunston. I'm a district court judge in Raleigh, North Carolina. I have served as an assistant attorney general. I've served as a prosecutor here in Wake County, and then currently as a judge. Whenever I was appointed in 2017, I was the third and youngest African-American female to be appointed to this bench. One of the things that I pride myself on is making sure that I advocate for mental health, and also specifically with our youth, and making sure that they are educated about the system, but also ensuring that their parents and themselves receive the therapy that they need. I was just telling Ms. Yelverton that I'm in domestic violence court. So I literally just stepped off the bench and hopped on this call. And so I've been hearing a lot of cases involving families and involving our children. So I'm super excited about this event and super excited for the dialogue and discussion.
Awesome. Thank you, Judge. So, Mr. Jasmere, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
How's everyone doing? Good evening. My name is Jasmere Preston, also known as Mr. Healthy Minds, licensed mental health therapist. I've been practicing since 2002, fully licensed last year. I'm the founder and CEO of Mentor Raising Mentors, Behavioral Health Services. I'm also an author of Healthy Minds, which is a tool to help kids succeed in school, at home, and with their social contact. It's a tool that allows kids and parents to actually color and talk about behaviors ranging from temper tantrums, crying spells, suicidal thoughts, fighting, and aggression. The focus is to explore those barriers and to also select color problem solving strategies and techniques to overcome those blocks, those stumbling blocks. So I'm very happy to be here and excited to actually talk about what we need to talk about today.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Jazz. And by the way, here's this awesome coloring book. You got to get you one.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So we'll go ahead and get started. Let's see, Ms. Natasha, what you got for us today?
So, how's everybody doing? I hope you guys are great. One thing that I've noticed, we've got some wonderful professionals that are participating in this panel today. So I'm excited about that, but we're talking about the youth, and in talking about the youth, I kind of want to know, we want to know a little bit about you guys. What was it like growing up, your experiences with mental health growing up? So definitely, I want to maybe start with Judge Ashley. How was it as a youth growing up and your experiences connected to mental health?
Well, that's a great question. So I grew up in Hickory, North Carolina, which sounds probably as country as it is. So, you know, I dealt with a lot of racism. And not only did I get it from the white counterparts, but I also got it from the Black counterparts. Constantly being told, you know, you sound like a white girl, or, you know, you think you're this, you think you're that. So growing up, I was extremely insecure. I was trying to adapt to whatever environment that I could, definitely being bullied a lot on both ends. And like I said, being the only African-American female in most of my classes, you know, they had that level of pressure. So I constantly was striving for perfection and striving to get everything right, feeling like I had to be the representative for the Black culture or the Black community. And so that was difficult. But as far as mental health, I mean, I never really considered therapy. I don't think a lot of people really considered that at the time, or knew really what it was, or really even understood what it was. But I definitely think I could have benefited from that. I think I had to just, you know, get it from my faith over the years. And so, but that was me growing up. Oh, you're muted.
I think that it's really, you know, that's something how you said that you dealt with racism both in your culture and on the outside. And I mean, that's just, and how long did you really see, how long did that actually happen and go on for you while you were, did that go on through your whole childhood, or did it change when you left Hickory, or?
It really didn't change. Definitely my entire childhood, that was the norm. Like I said, getting it from both ends, definitely from teachers, from fellow students. Oh, you're pretty for a Black girl. Oh, you're smart for a Black girl. You know, my favorite teacher telling me good luck with that when I told her I wanted to go to Wake Forest University and be a doctor. So, you know, that constant discouragement. So anytime I see kids, I'm like, don't let anybody tell you what you can't do or where you can't be. Because, you know, I'm a living testimony of that. But going to Wake Forest University was the exact same situation. It was the same type of environment. Not very many African Americans there, still trying to find my identity. But I attended North Carolina Central University School of Law, where it was just amazing to see professors and other individuals in powerful positions that looked like me, that really allowed me to identify better and feel better about myself. So it really wasn't until law school that I feel like I really was able to pursue who Ashley really is and not who she has to be for other people.
Wow. And so it wasn't until that point you actually were able to just really have a definition for your name. Wow. So What got you into juvenile justice? I just have to ask this. I'm just curious. I just got, everything is going on in the world right now, and I've got to know. We think law enforcement, we think about those things. But go ahead. I'll let you answer the question.
I think Janelle just said she works with juvenile justice and it can be challenging. Yes, ma'am, Janelle. Yes, ma'am. That's one of my favorite courtrooms that are working with our children. But I'll tell you, I went to Wake Forest to be a doctor, and obviously God has some different plans for that. But I never intended to be a judge at all. That was never my intention. What ended up happening was when I got the job here at the Wake County DA's office in Raleigh, I was the only African-American female out of 45 attorneys at the time. And for me, understanding that the prosecutor is the most important person in the courtroom, they can literally dismiss everything, and the judge would never see it. I felt like I could really benefit not only the Black community, but all communities based on my experiences of racism and the things I had dealt with, that I was like, I can really make a difference here and a positive input. Making, plea deals, right? Make sure that they're offered, correctly, that you're dismissing the right cases. I mean, just all of those different things. And I did serve in juvenile court. But what happened was one day, I was, like I said, never wanted to be a judge. I was sitting there looking out in the audience, and I realized that the audience looked like me. And then here I am, the only Black female as a prosecutor. And I look at the bench and I realized that there's not a woman that looks like me up there either. And it was literally at that moment I felt like God had called me. He said, actually, I've got more for you. And I was like, no, thank you, God. I'm fine right here. I'm fine right here. And he was like, no, I've got more for you. And so, fast forward 5 years later, I, left, and I tried to make sure that I had the experience and, all the things you have to do as a Black female to overcompensate, basically, to make sure that you're prepared for the position. And so I put my name in the hat for the first time, and the governor did not appoint me. I put my name in the hat again, and ended up getting appointed to the bench. And like I said, I was the third and youngest in over 50 years in the capital county of North Carolina. And I don't say that, to applaud myself. I say that how sad that is, because, like I said, that audience, as you know, looks like us.
Yeah.
Thank you. Go ahead.
All right, so Miss Kiera, hey.
Hey, everybody. I'm so sorry. Hey.
That's all right.
Hello.
No problem. So we definitely want to get your input. Judge Ashley just shared some information about what was it like growing up, and how did she deal with things on a mental health basis, and she shared her journey that led her to becoming one of our first, or not only Black judges in our district. So we wanted to kind of turn it over to you and let you share some insight about what was it like for you growing up, as far as from a mental health standpoint. I know you had a lot going on growing up because your mom is famous and your aunts, your grandmother. So, share a little bit about, how was it growing up from a mental health perspective?
It was interesting. I would say, like you said, with my mom being involved in the music industry, and then my father being a church leader internationally, it was different. There were some things that we couldn't always voice because we had to be considerate of their roles as it pertains to leadership. So we kind of had to be a little bit more responsible, or consider things differently, or a lot more, if you allow me. I'm trying to say this the right way so I don't get in trouble. But we had to just kind of basically consider things differently and a bit more at a young age. However, our parents did allow us this space to communicate and to speak about the concerns that we had. Basically, if you worked in the church, you would expect to be safe around church people when it came to, not betraying each other. And forgive me if it sounds like I'm talking in circles, but I'm really trying to filter what I say before I say it. But I would definitely say it was a good space because our parents encouraged us to express, to talk about things. Though they were the generation that told us, hey, don't do this because I said so, they were still open to us asking those questions. If we had the why, it was just give us the why in a respectful way. So those were the things that I remember from childhood. It wasn't, I can't say that there was a stressful space because, again, my mother is still my best friend, and the way she allowed there to be a balance, I think that's what created the space for us to not have so much of a mental strain. But then when we moved out of the neighborhood and we moved away from our own kind, for me in high school, it was different. I think we had like 6 break-ins when we were in the city, and it just turned into something different. So once we got out, I would say that was the challenge for me. I didn't want to be there at all. But I think I can say that was my experience as far as mental health, if that is an answer.
Okay. Yeah, that is a great answer.
Okay.
So, and of course, we've been waiting for this opportunity to ask you that because, again, through music, I'm thinking that was also a way for you to express yourself growing up. That's a way of self-care, which, I'm sure Mr. Jazz, our therapist on the panel, can share a little bit more about that. But you answered it perfectly.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, no problem. So, Mr. Jazz, same question for you, sir.
Yes,
Mental
ma'am.
wise, growing up.
Growing up. Well, I'm from Camden, New Jersey.
Where are you from?
By way of Pennsylvania. Growing up in my environment, I witnessed domestic violence, shootings, drug addicts, police harassment due to the color of my skin, which later formed into a form of anxiety and PTSD for me. But fortunately, in my line of work, I've learned how to overcome those negative thoughts and reminders of growing up so that I'm not affected in my normal everyday life and I can live a healthier lifestyle instead of feeling like that defenseless child without answers to combat what I was experiencing in my environment.
Wow. And look at how, that foundation set who you are today so you can give back to the community, right? Mentors, raising mentors.
Yes, ma'am. So I have my own, mental health agency, Mentor Raising Mentors, Behavioral Health Services, because of that, because of the experiences of what I've seen, and knowing that in our environment we are faced with a disadvantage, but that doesn't mean we can't reach our goals, and we have to learn how to give back, and we have to learn how to reach our hands back and help those who want to be helped. Especially who's in that environment, who do not understand mental health and why mental health is important and why seeking help and support is important.
Yeah. You got to be transparent. And someone shared also, I think it was in regards to what Kiera shared, and Judge Ashley might have hit on this too. I love when parents allow their kids to ask questions and not shut them down. I think growing up, having that relationship with our parents is key, or having a relationship with an adult figure or a role model figure is key. Because we have questions. Kids got questions.
Yeah, yes, we do.
And usually they know the answers when they ask the questions. They just want to see if we're going to keep it real with them and tell them the truth.
I'm sorry, Vicki. I was going to say, kids are so intuitive, and they see and feel everything. And so it's like when I'm talking to these parents, Jasmine, what you were talking about with domestic violence, when I'm hearing, oh, well, the child wasn't there. They were in their room. You don't think they hear that? They don't think that they hear the conversations you're having about him. You don't think that, it doesn't have to be the child pulling the parent off, which I see a lot of that too, for them to not be affected by this. And it really affects infants. Studies have proven it affects infants even more than older children who can compartmentalize, right? So the infants are the ones who end up later on, demonstrating that abusive behavior because that's all they know when their brain stems are developing. That anger, that loud noise, like all of that dissension affects them later, and they're more likely to act out than even the older kids.
Mm-hmm.
So. Wow.
Kids feel energy.
Mm-hmm.
So they feel the negative energy and they feel the positive energy. What we have to do is we have to create an environment that's full of positive energy, support, and love.
Yes.
But when you don't provide that energy, that space for children, they tend to react and they act out. So they need that sense of comfort.
So, and I was gonna add to what he just said, which my parents made sure that they protected our innocence. They allowed us to be children. They didn't push us to feel like we needed to be older than what we were. And they would correct the moment when it seemed like we were acting like we were older than what we were. They didn't have us to take on certain responsibilities if it was for a more seasoned or a mature person, they actually had us to believe it's okay to take your time and to not know it all right now. So I think for me, that was a sense of peace. And as my brother just mentioned, having that sense of support. Like, I think that village is not just for the child, but it's also for the adult, even at this stage, to have that support system. And like he said, having that space to where we feel the positivity, especially in the developmental stages. And then finding the gifts and the skill sets that the child has. Because as you were mentioning, Vicki, with my parents, it was a way for me to express myself. So my parents began to hear the things that maybe I did not talk about with what I wrote about. Or I used to always get into fights. And if I got into a fight, one time I really reacted and a boy threw a basketball at my head. My first instinct was to bang his head up against a brick wall. And my father said, what is wrong? Like, it wasn't even a moment. He wasn't fussing at me to just correct me. He wanted to know what's going on in your mind and why was that your first response to such things. So I think, like you were saying, the communication piece, protecting the innocence of the child and making sure that the environment of the child is also supportive, but figuring out what ways can they feel good and successful with retaliating a different way or expressing themselves in a different way, if that makes sense.
Kiera, I'm sorry, Vicki, didn't mean to take it. But Kiera, that is such a great point, because I think the other thing is, as parents, that we have to be sure that we are actually paying attention to our children, which is exactly what it sounds like happened there, that your dad was paying attention to what was happening. Because a lot of times as parents, we can say, oh, no, not my child. Oh, no, right. You can't talk to my child like that. You know, we talk about that village, right? And the church being like that village back in the day. Anybody could spank me in the church back in the day. I'm just saying, or snatch me up. But I think that's important. My son is 4 years old and he has a speech impediment. And I could have just gone on and just been like, I don't think he needs speech therapy. But I was like, I've got to face that fact that he needs speech therapy. And now he's speaking so well. And so as parents, we have got to be honest with ourselves about what our children, what our behaviors are of our children, so that things can get diagnosed early and they can get any treatment that they need. So I just thought that was an excellent point.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And, so it brings us to this next question about the pandemic, about the social injustice and the unrest that's going on right now. How is this impacting our kids? Like, it's impacting us. I know it's impacting me. And, again, kids sense the energy. I have two boys, 9 and 12, and they're not oblivious to what's going on. They see the news, or they see, they overhear the conversations that we're having about what's going on out here in the community. So, like, what about the youth? What advice or what can we do to protect them? Because it's out here, and we don't want to not know what's going on, but then we don't want them to know too much, because that can impede or affect their behavior as well. So let's see, Kiera, what are your thoughts? You look like you thinking too. You like.
It's funny you asked, because we were having a very in-depth conversation with myself and during our dance rehearsal. And there was a level of accountability that we were giving each other. And I think it's a transparent conversation that caused for us to not have our phones in the room, that caused for us to really say what is happening on the inside. How do you feel? And how do you feel about how your parents reacted? Do you feel like they responded in a weak way or in a strong way? I think just the conversation, and it's so unfortunate, because while we are experiencing such rage, anger, disappointment, and fear, that's a lot of emotions to have while you're talking about the whole racism piece, and then economically how we're affected. So I think it's I would definitely say it goes back to conversation and support, which is why I was saying I think that the village is not, again, just for the child, but it's for the adult as well. And when we say what is honest and not try to hide things because we think that the next person will think one thing about what we say and what we feel, I think that's when we'll continue to hit brick walls and never really get to an answer. I think too, once we put something or a solution out on the table, we have to stick to our guns and say, you know what, all right, this is what it's going to be. I was reading something, I think it was Nikki Giovanni, who talked about the Black Code, and it talked about how we don't steal from one another, we don't kill from one another, we support each other, we don't touch our children. I think if we put the solution on the table, I think having those conversations, but actually sticking to it and saying, this is what we're going to do in this house, this is what we're going to do with this group of people. I think that is one way. That's not the end all be all, but that could be one of steps 20, if that makes sense.
You're right about that. It's definitely a ladder. It goes up and down.
So
Yeah.
I'm curious to know exactly, like, what are your thoughts on how much information that we actually share with our youth, share with our kids about what's going on with the pandemic, things like that. And I'm asking this question because I had a situation where a young boy, maybe 7 or 8, his mom was sick, needed to go to the doctor to get checked, wasn't sure if it was COVID, wasn't sure of any of those things. And so going into the hospital and emergency room, as a result, they kept her there for an extensive amount of time. She got home 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. This young man was afraid. He stayed up all night, afraid that his mom wasn't going to come back home. And there's so many other different situations where kids are actually living in fear. They're afraid to go outside because of what's going on. So it's like, what's the message that adults should be teaching their kids? And also, you know, how much information should we be exposing them to as far as television, as far as what's going on with the pandemic? What's that balance? What do you guys think about that?
Well, I encourage the parents to monitor the information that their children are receiving and the sources of the information, to correct misinformation by sitting down and actually talking with them to process the news together, process what they're reading, process the things that they see on Facebook and Instagram and what's the other platform, TikTok. So helping the teens find credible information about the pandemic and how to prevent it from continuing to spread. Parents, they have their duty to reinforce the messages that follow and recommend guidelines during this pandemic. I will also say that during this time, I feel like it's important for parents to link their children to a therapist or mentor, someone who can talk to them, someone who can provide them with some type of support and allow them to be free and open to just speak. Allow them to be free and open to express themselves, because this is a sad time that we're facing. This is a stressful time that we're facing, and some of the kids feel like they don't have anybody to talk to. They don't have anyone to talk to, and they are scared. So I encourage, parents to allow them to be free and open up and talk, because this is new for everybody. And so we need to take healthy action. Everything that we need to talk about is healthy action in the households, and allowing children to just be free and open to express themselves about how they feel and what's going on. And if they have trouble with allowing them to express themselves, or if they feel as though they don't have the answers, connecting them with the proper help.
I think it's exactly like Jasmine said, that we have to be proactive with the information that we give our children and our youth versus reactive to what's happening. Because like you said, they're constantly involved in all of the social media. They're constantly talking to their friends. And so if you're not on top of it, they're going to listen to whatever information they get first. And for me, it's difficult because I have a 10-year-old and I have a 4-year-old. So, the 4-year-old, I'm like, wash your hands so you don't get germs. He's like, I won't get germs, mommy. And then the 10-year-old's like, coronavirus. Tell me more about that. So I can't freak her out and I can't freak him out. So I think you definitely have to have that conversation that's age appropriate for your children. But I do want to go back really quickly to your question about, race and like, what are we telling our kids? And I think it's the same thing right now as far as the appropriateness for their age group, right? That I'm starting to have that conversation with my 10-year-old about, you're a Black female, right? This is what that means to be a Black female. These are the things that, take place. However, one thing I think that we can do as a Black community is encourage our young people to get to know law enforcement, right? And to not be necessarily in fear of every single person that they meet, because quite frankly, there are a lot of really great positive interactions that happen. And I know here in Wake County, we have school resource officers in the schools, right? So, I would encourage my children to meet that school resource officer, get to know them. They are trained for good purposes to be in that and create that community basis. And so getting to know them and becoming familiar with it. My son right now is 4. Every time he sees a police officer, he's like, where's my sticker? Where's my sticker? I'm not going to be like, no, leave that officer alone. No, you don't talk to police officers. How is that helpful for the community, right? And we also have to encourage our youth, our African-American youth and Black youth, to become police officers, to become prosecutors, become a part of the system. Because if we want to see this change, then we need to be that change. And that means infiltrating the system and becoming a part of it. And so those are just some ways I think that we can try to change the dynamic of what's happening.
And it's also sad, like what you just hit on, Judge Ashley, about, think about it. Growing up, when they say, what do you want to be when you grow up? What were one of the occupations that somebody said they wanted to be? A policeman, right? Now it's like, look at what has happened. You ask the kids now what they want to be. I know they're not going to say that right now. So you're right. That's a great point. How do you bridge that back? Because, that's a whole nother platform and a whole nother conversation. But, again, how do we I feel so bad that I feel like the hope has been robbed from our kids, that, they're not able to just be kids.
Right.
And again, you got social media, you got devices now. My 1-year-old goddaughter, she know how to swipe that finger now on the devices. And that's what, my kids know how to, the young kids know how to use these devices. And it's definitely up to us on what they do with the devices, right? Because technology is technology and it's inevitable, but they have exposure, they have their fingertips to so many things that could really impact the thought process, that development process. And their goals and dreams. I think it's just really sad right now what we're going through, but we're going to get it back. It's all going to come back.
We serve a good God. We serve an able God. We always
awesome God. Awesome God.
Well, yeah. We definitely do. We serve an awesome God who's going to change things around. We don't understand what's going on right now, but sometimes we don't understand His plan. We just have to wait and ride it out and see it and have faith that everything is going to turn out how He intends it to be.
Yeah.
Speaking of our faith, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Kim.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no, you're fine. Go ahead.
I don't want to cut you off, please.
Okay.
Well, I was just adding and agreeing with you all. I was just agreeing. Literally the other night, I was watching everything that was on social media. Like, I have videos just saved to my phone to remind me to be cautious. And I had to delete it because it had me walking in such fear. And by the time I put my phone down at the end of the night, I slept so heavy. I woke up feeling heavy. And I think that what you feed your mind, what you feed your subconscious, scientifically, it says that it stays there. It can appear in your dream and all of that. So I really like it, but at some point we got to have a balance, if that makes sense. And I think that having that faith conversation with our children, like I have my nephew quoting, God is not giving us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. And they laugh at me, but in His prayers. And so while we say that God is this supernatural being, He's omniscient, He's omnipresent, then that means He's in my tomorrow that I don't know about. So I think understanding God from that perspective and saying, Lord, I need you to heighten my sense of discernment. Lately, that's been my prayer. It's been my prayer for my family because we are people of color. And so I've been saying, God, allow us to be so in tune with you where we surrender literally every part of our lives to you. So where if it's us having a conversation with the ant, I consult with you about that part too, so that you can let me know to be still, to not go down that road, or to slow down before the officer sees me. So I've really just been encouraging my family and friends to make sure we pray the right prayers and not just learned prayers, if that makes sense.
That's powerful.
Definitely.
Well, Miss Kiara, I got a question for you from a 12-year-old. You know, these youngsters are on social media all the time. And she actually looks up to you. She's 12. Her name is Maddie, and she says, what caused you and provoked you to be so transparent and positive on YouTube?
Me not wanting to go crazy, what we're actually here talking about, which is mental health, staying sane. And interestingly, you know, while I've noticed that the generations before used to tell us not to tell it all, which I still believe in saving some for yourself, but they did not believe in a transparent conversation. And I can say that I've seen family members completely flip mentally because they've kept so much bottled in. And because I have a desire to learn psychology and to study it more, just studying the mind, I feel like the Lord has led me to this scripture, because my aunt Dorinda always quoted it, and it says, "The prayers of the righteous availeth much." But the scripture in the verse before that, it says, "Confess your faults one to another that you may receive healing." And then in another translation, it says, "Confess your issues to someone else so
Wow.
that then they can pray." So in that scripture, the Bible lets me know that mental health is necessary for you to be stable in your mind, because it also says that a man that is unstable, or if he's able to, what's the scripture when it moves back and forth, you're tossed, you're able to just go any and everywhere. What is the scripture? A man that is unstable is unstable in all his ways. I wish I knew it, but the Bible talks a lot about the mind. So that's why I've become so transparent. Because too, it holds me accountable. Like, I don't want to be that believer that's saying my God is this way when he really has not been that way. And then God forbid I pass away and y'all learn a whole bunch of stuff about me, like she was living a whole lie, you know. So I don't want to be that person. But that scripture tells me to talk about it, to put some scriptures to it, to actually walk in faith and go from faith to faith, glory to glory, into a new dimension. But make sure you're giving your issues to the right person. That's where it says,
Mhm.
the prayers of the righteous availeth much. Because then, if I can't get to Jesus today, I can rest assured that if I tell one of y'all gonna get my message to him. You know what I'm saying? So I think that that's why I'm so transparent. So I believe in empowering the body of Christ and people who are not believers by sharing my story, and then them seeing she found a solution by her faith, or by giving it to believers who would surround her with prayers.
I think you're right. I agree with you. And I love the transparency. I mean, the one thing about it, and it's growing up in church and everywhere, I'm a PK kid too. So I kind of know, you know, they hid everything from us. And so we didn't, it was, you could be a kid, but in some cases, you weren't a kid because you had to carry yourself a certain way. And there were certain things that you couldn't do, or if you did it, you couldn't talk to anybody about it because it was embarrassment, it was all of these things. And so sometimes when you're out there and you're exposed to the world, or you're exposed to a whole congregation, you have more secrets. And then they use the topic, preachers kids are the worst kids. They go into all of those type of things. And the truth is that they're just being a kid, but they can't be the open kid like everybody else. And so, oh, because it's the preacher and because it's this person, then they and sometimes they are the worst. They are bad. They're very, very bad. But let's just be honest. We were all, And so, but the truth be told, at the end of the day, it's all about being able to have that transparent moment and not being able to have to almost wear a mask. And it's the sad part about it is that kids sometimes have to wear that mask too, based on the positions that their parents have and the lives that they lead. And that's not fair to them either.
Yes, ma'am. And one other thing to your point, I think we as believers, when we show that we have the same challenges as it pertains to us becoming better, we
Mm.
see that it's more obtainable. And I don't think that Jesus intended for us to make it seem like being a follower of him is so hard to do. It's actually the best decision. It's for the betterment of ourselves. It protects us from things that we don't see in the future. And so that's another reason why I want to be transparent, because I want the young believer to know, yes, you may have a struggle with fornication, but you can get through it and you can still make good decisions in your spouse and in your future or with your children and whatever it is. Just having people to know that, hey, I'm going to lay this out because I want you to know I'm falling just like you do, but I'm getting back up and I'm still walking. You may even see me fly tomorrow, and you may see me on the next day fall back down, but it's obtainable. Doing this Jesus thing, it can happen. It's not always easy, and that's because we do things our way instead of God's way. Our flesh
Amen.
tastes the way that we want to do it, and then when we get another taste of how God said do it in the beginning, we're like, oh, okay, well, that made a whole lot of sense in the beginning. I wish I did it that way. So that's why I love being transparent.
Now
Yeah.
you talking right, Kiera. I'm gonna have to get you some of them chocolate covered almonds, honey.
Yeah, I was going to say, absolutely. I mean, I think transparency with our kids is so key, because if we sit there and pretend like we never went through anything, what does that do for them? Right? What does that do for their mental state, that they feel like, well, I'm, like you said, I'm the only one that's dealing with this one issue. You know, I thank God for my mother, who had a child at 18 years old, had my older sister, you know, the first time she ever had sex, and she just kept it 100 with me. I raised my child by myself. This is what it was like. These are my mistakes. These are the things that I did. And she could have just been like, I'm not talking to you about it. You know, and I tell parents all the time, I'm like, you need to be honest with your kids at the appropriate time. Let them know about that abortion that you had. Let them know about that scheming man or woman that you were with. Let them know what you went through, so that they don't have to try to reinvent the wheel. You know, we're constantly trying to break generational curses, and the only way that we do that is by being honest about what our curses are.
Absolutely.
Amen. As human beings, we are built off connection. So if I feel connected, I understand that I can also too do it. If I don't feel connected with someone, if I feel like they're on a higher level and I can't get there, I may feel discouraged. I may feel like it can never happen for me. But if they can be transparent and I can connect with them, if they say, hey, I experienced this too. I too went through this devastation. I too went through this struggle. I too went through this challenge. Then I can say, hey, you're human, right? You're human. That means I can connect with you, and I too also can overcome this challenge and this adversity. So connection is everything as human beings, as we continue to live.
And again, as we talk about the youth, they know when we're not being transparent. And, you know, especially a lot of the work that we do with our youth, with our at-risk youth population, a lot of times they want to hear the real, and they respect you for it, because they don't want to hear the fluff. They don't want to hear the good version of it all. They really want to know the truth. And it helps to kind of bypass. Now, they may not always listen. We all have learned that. And I didn't always listen. But, you know, it's something about that nugget that walk away with, that they can say, you know what, Miss Vicky did tell me. So, and I tell them all the time, I say, on my watch, I'm gonna keep it to you straight. And that way, when it goes down, because it's gonna go down, you can't say I didn't tell you. And they say, Miss Vicky, you was right. You was right. You know. So
right. And Miss Vicky, I want to go right back to the you know, the racial tension and everything that we're dealing with right now. As it connects with that, I want to say the George Floyd incident has surfaced a lot of issues. You know, that was there. With our justice system, as well as magnified America's problem with racism and classism. So, however, the situation also has brought so many different colors, cultures, and classes together to fight for a solution to a problem that has plagued the United States for hundreds of years. But the youth I counsel, they speak and they say they're upset, they're frustrated, they're furious, they're scared. And they're trying to figure out a way, how do we move forward? What steps do I take to avoid being the next victim, and which solutions can I implement? And the first thing I talk to them about as a youth is self-change. Change starts with self first. Yeah. So if you want to create or spark change in the world, you have to create change, positive change within yourself. So you have to explore those stereotypes, and that's what we do in our sessions. We explore stereotypes, and they ask, why am I hated over people who have a wrong perception of who I am? All right, and I encourage them not to focus on what people think about them, but to focus on yourself. Right? How can you be better today and tomorrow? Focus on becoming the ultimate you by focus on doing the right instead of the wrong. Focus on your presentation. Focus on your education. Focus on your goal setting. Focus on your responsibilities. Focus on the light inside of you. So when those haters or stereotypers encounter you, they don't meet the person who they think they know or the person that they heard of. They meet the best version of you. So that's what we talk about with when in our sessions, when I'm dealing with the youth and they're frustrated and they're angry and they're looking for that connection, because as an adult, I'm angry as well. But I have to show them by example so they can see I'm angry, but this is how I'm going to do it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's real. That's deep.
The scriptures, a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways.
That's what it is.
And so that kind of brings everything all together. I'm the preacher on the panel, so praise God. Praise God. Yes, hallelujah. And so I think it brings everything. You know, it starts with the adults. It starts with the parents. You know, the kids didn't ask to be here. They're here. And so we've got to make sure that we become stable ourselves, to make sure that we're giving them the needed support. Kiara's story is unique. Everybody's story is unique and different, and not everybody has the parents that are stable-minded, and so you know our kids are out here. So those of us that are, I think that we've got to take that extra initiative to move forward and try to make sure that we establish that level of stability for them. So. I just think it's really key that adults do self-care, because right now. I think everybody's tired of each other. Because to be honest, I think everybody's tired of each other. Doesn't look like they're going back to school. Everybody's tired. It's like, okay, you can go outside.
Even the dog tired. The dog is tired too.
So it's interesting to me to see what's going to happen with all of this. But I'm one of my concerns, and you guys can kind of tell me what you think is what messages should we be giving our kids with protesting? They had one of the cities nearby. They had a youth protest. They were able to march just for ages. I think it was like 4 to like 12. They were able to protest and hold their signs up and march. And but I'm wondering, like, what type of message should we be giving, not just our young Black males, but also females, about protesting and marching and things like that? Like, do you guys think that they should be out there with the kids? I mean, the kids should be out there with the adults. What do you guys think?
What you think, Kiara? You thinking there? I see them think bubbles going on.
Because I'm sure we all have been taking what's happening to heart as Black people. So I've just been thinking really heavy. So, but I protested the other day. We did a peaceful protest, and I don't know if I would get in trouble for saying this. Maybe I shouldn't say it.
Go ahead. You amongst friends.
Say it, girl. Say it.
I won't say that it's right. I'm not saying that it's right, but I understand why some of us are doing the things that we're doing that may cause damage to buildings and things, looting. But you see, I'm breaking it up. I'm really filtering. While I understand,
be transparent. Do what you do.
While I understand, I don't think it's right, because it puts us in more danger. And I don't like I saw the other day, the Black female cop respond to her colleague where there was a peaceful protest and she was on her knees. She wasn't doing anything. But for some reason, he felt the need to touch her. And then, so I understand both sides, if you allow me to say that. But I do believe in us speaking up for ourselves. And even if the way of protesting is not marching, then you are using your platform of where you're watched the most, and you're informing your community. You're letting them know that this is what's happening. This is what we should do. Or these are ways of, like what we're doing now, having this conversation. It's not causing any damage to anyone. It's not putting anyone, in harm's way. But even coming together as Black people and saying, hey, we need to get some more officers, like how that was the solution. So maybe we can challenge some more people who have Black sons and daughters that are willing to, let me change my occupation to be the change in this moment. That's just the thought. I don't have the answer, but I have been thinking. Y'all keep seeing me in thought, but I'm sure we all are thinking of something.
So Kiera, one of the things that I follow you on Instagram, and it was a video you posted, a young man who your song "Something Has to Break" played. And I don't know what his role was, but he was a young fellow. And he kind of turned that energy into prayer. He said, I just want to pray everything. I know it's like thousands of people out there. I don't know if they were in New York or where were they? Do you know?
I don't know where they were.
But I think it was an awesome moment that he used his platform to reach them where they are. I think it's a matter of reaching the youth where they are, tapping into their communication style, right? And he was able to debut, plug in your song where something has to break, but it also allows them to express themselves. They want to do something. I think the youth, I think someone posted on here, Gene Hoskins, he posted, rioting can be debatable or protesting can be debatable, but I think the initial energy is where folks just were frustrated and they needed to get something out, right?
Yeah.
So now as they move through that transition, now you get a chance to think. Now let's think, strategize. How do we put this into play? How do we put this into prayer? And I thought it was just wonderful seeing that young man with your song playing, and he was praying with those people. Like that right there was just, I thought that was just beautiful.
Yeah. And you know what? I think that is a great point. I think it's really us coming together. But to answer your initial question, because I want to make this clear to the young people that are watching and listening, I don't think that you should put yourself in harm's way. Like going out there and looting and doing all of that, I don't agree with that. I don't think that you should do that. While I understand it, I don't think you should do it. I understand we're angry. I understand we are hurt. I understand some of us, that's all we know how to express. But just because, the word says it, just because it's lawful doesn't mean it's expedient. Doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. So I would tell my nephew or my godson, don't go out there doing that. Don't do that. Don't do it. Don't do it. If you're watching and you listening, don't do it, because I don't want anything to happen to you. I don't want you. And they're already looking for something that we will do so that they can say, you did it, so now I can correct it. And their way of correction is not fair. So I will say that is my answer. I said I didn't have the answer, but if I were talking to my nephew, if I were talking to my unborn son, I would tell them, don't go out there. Don't do it unless you're doing a peaceful protest. And we went the other day and we protested with, we marched, but we were there with a strategy and with order, and we were there with the police. So there were police officers who were protesting with us. So we still had someone on our side to protect us just in case, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I would say absolutely. I agree with you, Kiera. There's a difference between protesting and rioting, right? And the protesting, I think, is definitely, once again, an age appropriate type of thing. How old are the children? What's the maturity level? Do you want to explain to them what's going on? That's your right. Exercise that right. Teach like you said earlier, teach your children how to stand up for themselves, in a respectful way, whenever they see an injustice taking place, to understand that and to ingrain that in them, I think is fantastic. But like you said, Kiera, when it gets into the rioting, when it gets into the looting, when it gets into that other part of it, and that some of those people are not doing it out of anger, they're doing it out of opportunity, because that's what they want to do. They're not mad. They could care less about George Floyd and what happened with him, because if the family stands up and says, stop doing it, and you're still doing it, then you're not doing it for him. You're doing it for you. Right. And what I think about are just the ramifications of those actions, right? So you're going to be in my courtroom. And I'm going to have to see that. And now you got a criminal charge that's going to follow you, whether a felony or a misdemeanor is going to follow you after that, because of the decisions that you were making in this opportunity. Right. And so for the children, when the protest is over, when you're done walking, go on home. There's nothing else to be done, after dark. And I just think that we've got to protect our youth. We need to know what they're doing. We need to know where they are. We need to put them on these schedules and on their own curfews to keep our kids safe and to keep them out of this criminal justice system.
Right. And Vicky, I want to share with the audience, and I want to speak to the youth, because there is life post this situation. And what we need to do for our youth, we need to give them tools to be successful post this situation. And I've thought of 3 different factors that they need to focus on to continue to be successful after this situation. And one thing is creating, nurturing, and encouraging meaningful, caring relationships. Who I'm around can shape or reshape my future.
Wow.
So that's one thing that they need to know. Who you're around, who you're connected to, who you're associated with can shape or reshape your future, helping the youth with creating standards and high expectations for themselves. We have to create standards and high expectations so we can overcome the challenge, so we can overcome the hurdle, and introducing them to a solution-focused mindset instead of a problematic one.
Yes.
Right? Finally, teaching them about opportunities and taking advantage of opportunities around them, or seeking opportunities in order to reach the next level in their lives. We spend so much time in the house playing video games, Fortnite, what have you, and not going out there to seek opportunity, but yet we want to complain. We have to stop that, and we have to focus on our future. I think the youth of today are only worried about today, and they're not focused on tomorrow. So we have to change that mindset. We have to change that mentality.
Jasmine, I'm sorry, I just want to touch on that. I meant to say something earlier, but I think you are dead on, especially with our young Black men. Seeing other positive Black male role models is so important for them to see that reflected. But on top of that, when you talk about who is infiltrating them, right? Who is talking to them? It's so many kids in my courtroom that are based, are there based on peer pressure, based on their friends, right? I had one young man come in and he was getting ready to go to, baby jail, and the other friend was getting to go home. And I said to him, why would you let this person influence you when you know you already have a record that's going to keep you locked up over Christmas? Whereas your other friend, who this is his first time, is now going to go home and spend it with his mom and his dad. Right? You got to be these kids have got to be so careful, because if they don't have a mentor like what you're doing, which is fantastic, they're going to look to each other, and then it's nothing but chaos.
Right.
And can I just add, because we talked about that level of transparency with the youth, the reason why I say I understand is because I was talking to some other young people about, I asked them, why do you think looting is okay? Why do you think rioting is okay? And they made a great point. And I thought that I think it's necessary for me to share, just so that the young people that are watching will understand. We understand your anger. We understand your rage. They responded and they said, because look at what they did to Emmett Till. They had no regard. Look at what they did to those 4 girls in the church. They blew up our stuff. They had no regard. And as they were talking about it, I began to become overwhelmed with the same emotion and rage. Like, okay, then let's go out here and do it then, because they did not have any regard. So again, like Judge said, it's not right. And there are other things, like my brother said, there are other things that we have to consider, life after this. And that should always be our question. But I want you to know, while we understand, we see your point. So don't think it's just us saying, don't do it this way, don't do it this way. No, we understand, but we want you to live again. We want you to understand that you may not be the one that we all have the odds against us, but you may have a chance. So while you have the chance, let's protect that chance, and let's use it and do the most that we can with it, if that makes sense. I just wanted to put that out, because I didn't want nobody to leave like, Kiara agrees with looting. She agrees with all that stuff.
Nobody thought that.
Do it.
Kiara, I was just gonna say, I think that's awesome.
We're going to say roll the tape, do the fact checker. That's not what you said.
Fact check.
Kiara, I agree with you 100%, especially whenever it comes to how do we channel that energy and being strategic. Yes, we are angry. Yes, we are upset, but we got to get strategic. What does that look like? Well, that looks like voting. That's what that looks like. I know people are tired of hearing it, but guess what? The mayor is the one that appoints the chief of police. The sheriff is the other individual that is elected by the people. The prosecutor is also elected by the people. In North Carolina, the judge is going to hear the case or have to render what's going on is elected by the people, right? Then if you get jury duty, how many people are, I don't want to do the jury duty summons. How many people in the church do you think I hear from talking about, well, I don't feel like I can stand in judgment of somebody else. I just don't feel like I can. Okay, guess what? Because if you don't feel like you can stand in judgment, I bet the KKK or somebody else feels like they can stand in judgment of somebody else. They don't have a problem doing it, right? So when we've been called to these action points, and these are just a few action points, but when we get called to these action points, we as Black people have to stand up and rise up and say, I will rise to that occasion to make the change that needs to be made, to effectuate the justice that we all want to see.
Absolutely. I agree, Judge. And stop saying you woke. Like, if you woke, then wake up, go vote, and use your voice. Like, let's use our sense.
Stay woke. Just stay woke. So Kiera, like now, I read somewhere about a nonprofit. Do you still have your nonprofit going on? The youth nonprofit?
I do, but I slowed down with it because I kind of have shifted gears with my mentorship, and it's based around women. But yes, we do have it, but it's like an extension of that. So I'm more so pouring into young women, and we're building similar to what my brother is doing, building mentors. I don't like to say that I'm the mentor, but it's more of a sisterhood.
Oh, love it, love it, love it. Is there anything we can do to help support that effort?
Absolutely. Yes, we need some money. We need some more people. No, I'm just playing. You can send more young people because I feel like we have so much knowledge to share with them. We have these transparent conversations about planning your life, your career, and especially I plan to be more strategic and more intentional, especially because there are more Black women and Black girls who are in this mentorship or sisterhood. So having your presence there, we have guests very often within the cause that we do, and we'll have these transparent conversations. They can ask their questions so that it's not limited. So absolutely, we can have your presence. Even when we do our events, I can send you a list of things. I always need help, and I'm not ashamed to say it. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, we about helping. This takes a village. We already said that.
Hey, Kiera, let me know. I'm down for whatever.
Yeah,
Perfect. Thank you, y'all.
So,
Same here, whatever y'all need.
Thank you. So as far as as we bring this thing full circle, in my Natasha Lewis voice, go ahead, Natasha, go ahead, play your part.
As we begin to bring things full circle, we are so excited about all of the wonderful things that have come forth today. And I'm going to just we want to go through each of the panelists and have you just give us a word of encouragement, empowerment, something for us to leave with. If you could give us a phrase or a statement that will give us something to leave with for today, because of course we're not done. We're going to have to do another session on mental health in the youth, because we just tapped the surface of it. And I care for the kids, and I want the kids to be able to have a chance and not necessarily have to deal with some of the things that all of us have dealt with growing up. So I guess we'll start with Judge Ashley.
I should go start with Kiera. I was like, yes, I can listen to what Kiera says. First of all, thank y'all for putting this on. It's so important. Sometimes we're so focused on ourselves that we don't think about our kids. So the only thing I would really say is what I said earlier, that we serve an amazing God who is capable of changing things in the blink of an eye. And we have to continue to trust him. My mentor, one of the other Black judges here in Wake County, said, actually, it's not a time to be agnostic. It is not a time to be an atheist. And I said, that's right. If there was ever a time, now is the time to be on our knees, believing and receiving who he is and loving him and loving our children and encouraging them to have their own relationship with God so that they can have those conversations that they feel like they can't even have with us. So we just continue to encourage our youth. We love on them, and anything that we can do for them, we'll continue to do.
Thank you, Judge Ashley. All right, let's see, Mr. Jasmine.
Again, I definitely want to say thank you for having me. This has been a pleasure. The only thing I just want to say to our youth, to the people who are watching, is just believe in tomorrow. When we feel like today is the last day and our backs are against the wall, we respond based off our survival skills. So I want all my people out there to believe in tomorrow. Tomorrow was a better day, and we have so much ahead of us to look forward to. So believe in tomorrow.
That was deep, brother. That was deep.
That was good.
I believe.
Go.
I believe. And
Awesome.
tomorrow.
Crazy. Y'all are crazy.
Miss Kiara.
Well, after Jasmine said that, I'm thinking like, and amen. I don't have nothing else. I mean, what him and Judge Ashley said, I am in total agreement with them. The only thing that I can think of is to be strong and courageous, and that's a scripture, but it makes sense in this time when you say full circle. Being strong, it can bring us down, but be strong. And like my brother said, Jasmine, believe in tomorrow, and being courageous, finding your way to have your voice, but being safe and knowing that you have people who love you enough to protect. Like, listen, that's the other thing that I think this generation does not like to do. They don't like to listen. It's okay to listen. I promise it is. I have listened, and it's the best thing that I have done. And I look at some of my friends who are my peers or the same age. Just be okay with listening. So be strong, courageous, and listen.
That's awesome. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Thank you, thank you. All right, Vicki.
So, as we have had an opportunity to talk about mental health in our youth, we covered a lot of bases. Like Natasha mentioned, we definitely would warrant to have another conversation because there's so many layers to this. But I appreciate the panel joining us today. We had awesome feedback from our streaming audience. I mean, I don't even know how many comments we got. I was trying to keep up with them. That I know one thing, they love Miss Kiki. That's for sure.
I love y'all too.
And, I truly appreciate Judge Ashley. She's been in session all day today in court, and she took time out her busy schedule to join us this afternoon. And Judge Ashley has been on our panels before, and every time I reach out to her, she's always there for us. So I truly appreciate Judge Ashley. Mr. Jasmine Preston, aka the Healthy Mind.
Mr. Healthy Minds.
Mr. Healthy Minds. He's been there for us. He's been right there with us. And again, he's a unique individual. He's a unicorn. There's not a lot of African-American male clinicians out here that actually have what it takes to connect to our youth. Some clinicians, that's not their specialty, but Jazz specializes in working with our youth. So we truly appreciate him. And he's been available to us and working, collaborating with us every time we ask him as well. And Miss Kiara Sheard, it has been a pleasure. I love your music. We are definitely a fan. So I appreciate you joining us this afternoon. I know you've had a busy day earlier and then ahead of you. So I appreciate you taking time out to talk about this much needed discussion with mental health in our youth. So thank you, darling. We appreciate you. And
Thank you for having me.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. And Natasha, my right hand. Thank you, ma'am, for being here with us today. I appreciate you and all that you do. Pastor Natasha Lewis. But without further ado, are all hearts and minds clear? Do you have any other thoughts you'd like to share?
I got my closing.
Yes, ma'am.
I didn't do my part. Everybody gave
my bad. I apologize. Natasha.
And my closing is, I do not own the copyright to this song, but my closing is, I believe the children are our future. Teach them well and let them lead the way. Show them all the beauty they possess inside. Give them a sense of pride to make it easy. And hang on in there. That's what I got.
I love that song, Hang On In There. Woo, and the new song. Something Has to Break. Y'all follow her on our Instagram. And Kiara, is there a way that they can tune into your new song?
Yeah, I'm all over Instagram and YouTube. It's up there, but you can go to Apple Music, Spotify, all of your digital platforms for music, and it's available. The whole album is available now.
Oh, wonderful.
Woo-hoo. Well, thank you again, panelists, for your time today. Thank you, streaming audience, for tuning in, and we'll see you again.
And also, thank you to Two Brown Girls. Create your own space, guys. Definitely work towards creating your own space moving forward. You guys have an awesome, awesome week, awesome day, and take care and love on the kids. God bless you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.